Welcome, everyone, to the Songwriters on Process podcast. My name is Benno Papari, and on this podcast, I take a deep dive into the writing process behind some of the world's best songwriters. By way of background, I am a former English professor. I have a PhD in English language and literature, and I'm a writer myself. So this is a conversation about writing between two writers. My goal has always been to treat songwriters the same way that we treat prose writers, just as writers, plain and simple. So that's all we focus on. I don't care about tour stories, favorite bands, how bands get their name, favorite foods, anything like that. This is, again, a deep dive into the songwriting process with some of the world's best songwriters. And with that, let's get into today's episode. And today on the pod, it is Scott McCaughey. I'm going to take a deep breath and try to list all of the things he's involved with. I'm not sure where I even begin. So for the purposes of this podcast episode, McCaughey is one of the founding members of the -5, and they have a new album out called R.E.M. Penelope. He is also one of the founding members of the Baseball Project, a project with Peter Buck and Mike Mills and a couple other people. He is known as the unofficial fifth member of R.E.M. from 94 to 2011. Played on albums, played live with them. He is also a member of the Young Fresh Fellows, the Filthy Friends, many things. So spend 30 seconds looking online. You'll see all the things he's involved with. It is dizzying, and that provides context for our discussion today. But again, the new album from the -5 is called R.E.M. Penelope. But I'm very excited to go see both the -5 and Baseball Project next month. So why do I say all that? Because you can see all the things he's involved with. Scott McCaughey never stops writing. I think I asked him that question, and it was almost, he didn't scoff, but maybe there was internal scoffing because he doesn't get writer's block. He's very busy, but he still finds time to write all of the time. I asked him what the hardest song on the album was to write. He said there wasn't any because he's always writing. It sounds like he just has bookshelves and bookshelves, storage closets, bins of songs that he pulls from all of the time. He has so many of these ideas. He's just overflowing with creativity. I think you have to listen to this to really appreciate it. There's also an interesting backstory here. In 2017, he suffered a pretty devastating stroke, where he lost all verbal ability. When he was in the hospital, couldn't talk, couldn't respond to people. And he said that after 3 days in the ICU, though, he was able to write. He started to write. Couldn't talk, but he was still writing. And one of the byproducts of that was that he said he really can't remember much anymore, so he has to write things down immediately. If an idea comes to him, he doesn't have the luxury of saying, "Oh, I'll wait a few minutes to write this down, or a half hour or whatever." He said that if he doesn't write it down in 5 seconds, it's gone. But again, you can really appreciate the man is a fountain of words. So with that, this is a big thrill for me to talk to him, just given his musical pedigree. Again, Scott McCaughey, the -5's new album is called R.E.M. Penelope. Here's my interview with Scott McCaughey. Well, listen, I start with a basic question, and that is, do you think it's important in some fashion to create every day, or do you feel like forcing the issue might make things derivative?
I don't really force the issue when it comes to songwriting. I don't really feel the need to, and I don't feel like it's necessary. I mean, I'm not like one of these guys who, like you're writing a novel, you get up at 5 in the morning and you write 10 pages before, before you can do anything else. I mean, I think that works for people, but it's not my discipline. My discipline just comes from my need to, I mean, I always think of ideas, for songs. And so I try to follow them when it happens, but I very rarely sit down and say, I got to write a song, I got to, I mean, I do a thing where if there's a if I schedule a session, if I say, hey, these friends are going to be in town, let's get together and record. Then I'll say, okay, do I have any songs? And I always do. I always think I don't have any, but then I just start looking in my notebooks and my phone and everything, and it's a constant. There's times I've written songs I didn't even remember, because I just always do it, so I don't really feel the need to drive myself to it, because I just kind of am always doing it.
So if it's not happening, there's no awareness or anxiety of, wow, it's been a few days. The ideas aren't happening or I'm not writing.
No, I mean, I like I said, I tend to feel like I feel like, God, I haven't been writing any songs lately, and then I realize I have been. I mean, I just kind of do it. I constantly am doing it. I'm always writing down ideas and notes and a couple verses here and there, and then when it comes to time to do some recording music with other people, I just I just have it, it's there. There's never been a time when I think, I mean, when I get worried about, oh, I've got a session coming up, I don't have any songs, because I just discovered that they're always there, because I'm always chipping away at them, even though I'm not like writing for a specific band, or even a specific project. I mean, it changes a little bit when, like, if we got a baseball project record coming up, then it's like those are kind of songs that are kind of like assignments. They're really fun because they're specific. They're specific. And so, but I always find my notebooks that have ideas for baseball ideas songs too. So um, so there's always something in the works.
Okay, many follow-ups. The notebooks. How far back do they go? How far back do those notebooks go? How many years do you have of notebooks?
Ah, going back to the oh God, I don't know if I probably even have some from like the 70s.
Really?
Yeah, but I mean, but most of them probably were more from the 80s, when I started writing for the Young Fresh Fellows. So um I can go back to those every once in a while and find something that, oh, that was a good idea. I should do something with that. So I mean, I don't usually go that far when I'm coming up with a new record for a new record or something like that. But because it feels better if they're more contemporary. But sometimes you find stuff like that that's things that I ignored at the time, that for 30 or 40 years is just sitting around, and I think, oh, that's really good. More often, if it's 30 or 40 years old, I find something to think, that's a terrible idea. That's a horrible song. Whatever. But there are sometimes there's good things, that come from it too.
I know. I don't think I've ever looked at anything I've written in the past and said, wow, that's even better than I thought. It's
Right.
always,
Yeah.
I can't believe I wrote that.
It doesn't happen that often, but sometimes there's good things. But yeah, but more often it's like, oh, I'm really glad I didn't record that one.
Do you notice a difference in the quality or the depth of the thoughts of the ideas that you're jotting down on your phone versus in the notebook?
No, they all come from the same thing. It just something sparks an idea. Often it's a phrase I hear. Oh, that'd be a good song title for a song or something like that, and I just wing it from there. Or I get a certain idea for something, I write a verse or something, and then and like sometimes the notes section on the phone, I kind of forget that even exists, but I go there and I find, wow, like complete songs that I wrote, and I barely even remember writing them. Like from a month ago or a couple nights ago. Sometimes those are like in the middle of the night. When I reach the phone on this by the side of the bed, and just jot them down like that, because it takes a little more effort to to get a notebook and turn on. I don't want to turn on a light, to to disturb people.
That's what I'm asking because I'm wondering I've never thought about that before, but because it takes more effort and it's more deliberate, if
Yeah.
there's deeper maybe introspection in those. I feel like phones just aren't built for that kind of stuff anyways. So I don't know. I never
I
thought
don't
about
really
that.
like I don't li like writing in the notes thing, but if I'm out on a walk, which is when I often get ideas for songs when I'm on a walk, that's when things just start percolating, and so that's what I end up using the notes thing on my phone, and but, I got this laptop. It's got songs in it. I've got, lyrics I'm talking about because most of my songs start with lyrics most of the time. And, when I've got the notes thing in the iPhone, sometimes I'll write it on an email and send the email to myself, Um, and there's my computer downstairs that I write on, and then there's like 5 different notebooks going at once. So, when I really have a session, I there's a lot of places I can look, and I can find things that they're scattered, but, I don't have all the computers tied together so they have the same thing in them and everything like that. So it's kind of interesting.
It's funny. This reminds me, I had interviewed James McMurtry. This is probably 10 years ago or maybe more. And he told me that he was really upset because I'd forgotten this, but the Notes app in the iPhone actually used to look like a notebook. There were actually lines in the
Uh-huh.
app, and I'd forgotten that. And they had just changed it over, and he drove him crazy because he couldn't write notes in the Notes app anymore now that there were no lines
Oh, that's
in the
weird.
app.
I
Um,
don't remember ever seeing it when it lines on it.
It did. I think now that I think about it, it looked like a spiral notebook, I think.
That's funny.
Um, so let's talk about walking, because I think the role of movement is crucial to my creative process. I use walks as a way to as a break. I do find to get ideas, but I find that if I'm sitting here and I'm at an impasse, I'll go take a walk. And I
Mhm.
mean, there was a great book by this guy named Adam Sisman. It's called The Friendship. It's about the relationship between the romantic poets Wordsworth and Coleridge. And they estimate that Wordsworth walked 100,000 miles in his life, which is, if you figure it out, I mean,
Wow.
nothing else to do back in the day, but it's somewhere incredibly, it's like 30 miles a day for 30
Right.
years, I think, or something like that. And
Wow.
they both composed their poems while they were walking.
Uh-huh.
So I'd love to know, I'd love to explore that with you because that's something I hear a lot about walking or hiking or biking or running. So it sounds like that's a fruitful time for you.
For me, it's, walking and driving. Driving's the same. If I'm driving, you know, um, on the freeway, on the highway, I get a lot of ideas for songs then too, and that's a little more complicated because it's hard to get the to get them down. So I actually usually the easiest thing to do with there is I turn on the voice memo and I just say compose lines, in voice, and so that takes a lot of editing later, but I have tons and tons of voice memos where I'm thinking of lyrics.
Does it matter where you're going? Because my sense is if you're going someplace unfamiliar, your mind can't wander.
Right.
But if you're walking the same route every day, it
Yeah.
becomes almost routine, right?
It's more like that, and typically when it's driving, it's like driving between Portland and Seattle because that's where I drive back and forth all the time. So that's it often happens there because it's kind of a mindless effort, even though you got to pay attention, but but I don't really think about where I'm going then. And yeah, when I'm walking, it's the same thing. I just walking and just things come up. I don't know.
Well, I this is the one part. This is the one thing I mention in every podcast with songwriters. The Agatha Christie quote. She said, "The best time to write a book is when you're doing the dishes."
Uh-huh.
So that
Yeah.
idea that when your brain, and that's why we get our best ideas in the shower. They talk
Yeah.
about the science behind that.
Right.
When our brains are engaged in unconscious activity,
Hmm.
that requires no thought, that's when the creativity bubbles up. So I hear songwriters tell me folding laundry, mowing the lawn, doing the dishes, cooking, gardening, vacuuming when
Yeah,
and that's not the same as walking, but your brains are doing something that requires no conscious thoughts. So
right.
does that happen a lot too? Do you notice that to be a productive time?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's what it is, really. I mean, it's because I'm not, it's just different if you go and sit down at the piano or guitar. I mean, that will work on occasion, but I tend to do that more when I've got assembled a whole bunch of, you know, songs they're at least half or three quarters written, and then I'll go to the instrument and get the music and see see how it's working. But yeah, but the basic ideas always just come kind of when I'm doing something that where I'm not don't really have to think about it. Yeah, it's
It's
weird.
it is. I find it fascinating
Yeah, yeah.
the ideas never happen when you think about sitting down and saying, "I'm going to have an idea."
Right, right.
So I want to go back to what you said earlier. So it sounds like you've got all these sources, the computer, the laptop, the phone, the journals, and are you just pulling from, did songs kind of happen because you're pulling from all these sources? Are you taking like an idea from one place, an idea from another place, and together in a song, or are those songs kind of all happening in one of those um places, if that makes sense?
They usually happen in one of those places. I'm not, if I get an idea, I'll usually run with it until I got, at least three verses and a chorus, or five or six verses and no chorus, as I sometimes do. Sometimes I forget to write a chorus, but that comes from listening to Dylan, I guess, or whatever. Just and I don't really worry about that so much. I'm more about the words, and I feel like I'm getting better at making melodies for them, but it's for me, it's always the lyrics are kind of the first thing, or sometimes they can happen at the same time, which is really magical when you actually write the words and the music at the same time, which used to happen a lot, but it doesn't happen to me very often anymore. Now it's really a special event when it happens. But that's always kind of the preferred way. But yeah, I mean, my life is so busy too, and fractured. I always have my mind going a million different areas because as you know, it's not just being a creative person. You have to do all the bullshit work too. You know, like just I mean, I don't have a manager. I don't have anybody who pays the bills for me and and does all that stuff and wash the dishes and everything like that. My wife does we're a team, but when it comes to that kind of stuff, it's hard to even have time to write songs, honestly. That's why I feel like maybe that's why I've adapted to just grabbing and putting in any ideas down whenever I have a second and whenever I have an idea, and and do and do that way. But I guess what you were asking is am I cobbling things together? I don't really cobble things together so much. I mean, it happens every once in a while, but pretty much it's it I follow through one and get a song going that way. And what I end up finding is at some point when I'm thinking about making a record, I find themes that are in common, with songs. So groups songs kind of naturally group together for me. So like on the latest -5 record, it just those songs just seem to go together. Just the feeling of them did. So
I love that album. I'm listening to
thanks.
it a lot. It's so good. The energy, just everything about it, I love. What was the hardest? Was there a song on the album that what was the hardest and most challenging song to write that you maybe felt like you wanted to give up on? Was there any song like that
No,
no?
none of those are like that. I mean, these are songs that just kind of came together just really, really quickly. I mean, like I said, I kind of worked backwards in that I book a session and then I find the songs, because those records, that record was recorded in like two or three different little sessions. That like all the side one was done on one day after we'd done some Filthy Friends shows, and we were in Seattle, and I had a day, and I asked Linda to stay around for another day, and Kurt and Peter to stay around for another day. So we'd all been playing together, playing Filthy Friends songs, and then we had one day to go into the studio and come up with a bunch of -5 songs. And so when I decided, when everybody agreed to do that, then I just went, okay, what songs do I have? And I found all these songs that felt like they went together. And another part of that session was I was recording another Neil Young tribute album, so I had a couple of those in there too. But the 6 songs that we didn't use for the Neil Young project they just went together so well, and the energy was so well, and we recorded live, and they were just songs that I just some things that I'd been recently working on. Like I didn't, it's like typically I don't even remember why I wrote them or where they came from, but I just find them and grab them and do it, and that's what that record was like. So that record was kind of the most effortless record I've ever made, honestly. It was just magical because the people just who played with them, we just played the songs and they sounded like a record. It was just really magical, and they hadn't had to think about them. They hadn't practiced the songs. They never even heard them before we recorded them, you know? So,
The theme I'm hearing, and I'm the same way, is I write really well under deadlines, but I have to create false deadlines. So, for
right,
example, if my wife says we're going out at 6, I'll start writing at 5 because I know I have an hour. But if
right.
I said I'll start the stopwatch and write for an hour, I won't get anything done if I don't really have to stop. I hear that's what you're doing is you're saying, "I'll book the studio time, now I gotta get my ass in gear." So it sounds
Right,
like you
right.
wrote really well under deadline.
Right, yeah. We did that with the first baseball project record too. With Steve and I had discussed this idea of um, doing a record about baseball. It wasn't even going to be a band. It was just like an idea. And at some point they said, "Well, you guys want to come out to Portland, and I'll book a couple days at Jackpot And they said, "Yeah, let's do it." So we said, "Okay, it's in December." So then I was like, "Okay, well now we got to write songs." you know, we had a few months at that point. It wasn't like a week later, but we had a few months, and so that's when that really got the wheels turning for us. We're gonna do this. We got something to shoot for. We got to have songs. So, and Steve and I just regularly were cranking them out then at that point.
So the songs that really do come the fastest, that I feel like they just all happen at once, are you less likely to touch those because you feel like there's a reason why it happens so quickly?
Yeah,
I shouldn't probably touch it.
yeah, I am. And those tend to be like that way, and I want to keep them pretty pure. But the other ones they're kind of fair game, and I'll change lyrics at the last second. And some of the ones when we did the basics for the -5 record, you know, I realized when I sang the songs later at home, I changed a few lines. I changed the lyrics, and so because I get the lyrics sheet and I go, well, I didn't sing that, So I was like, I'm going to change that, which I don't think is always a great idea. I mean, with the Young Fresh Fellows, when I would do that, we'd be playing songs for a while, then we go in to record them, and I would think, well, I should really make sure the lyrics are perfect now because I'm singing it, on the record, and usually if I change the line or something, the guys in the band would think, "Why'd you change that line? I think it was better before." You know? So, sometimes I overthink a little bit too much too. Yeah. And otherwise, it could be because they just got used to hearing it one way too or something too, but, sometimes I think a little too hard, you know? So, I try not to do that with songs that really happened, like, magically kind of appeared.
So when you start to write, are you typically writing starting on guitar or piano?
Um It depends. Probably, yeah, probably 80% guitar, 20% piano, something like that, maybe.
Do you go to the other one if you find that it's not happening with one of them?
Yeah, sometimes I I'm doing the just the minimal thing behind the lyrics to get the songs. Because now, like on the last record, that -5 record, and the latest Young Fresh Fellas record, those I didn't ever even demo any of those songs because I used to do pretty good demos, and and flesh it out and play it for people, and they go, "Oh, that sounds really great." But those I wanted them to be spontaneous, so nobody had heard them before we got in the studio, and I had barely even I didn't really even have arrangements made up for them or anything. I just had the chords and lyrics, So I just play the basic thing, and then we see what we come up with.
What about so does ritual matter at all? I mean, is there a room where you tend to write, but it sounds like really doesn't matter.
No, I write on the porch, I write in the um backyard. I mean, I do I t there's a lot of the actual finishing the songs happens in the basement in the studio, my dungeon of horror, as I call it. Um, I mean, it tends to be there that I have the guitar and piano, and I gather up all the lyrics and stuff and start putting them together. That tends to happen there, but not always. I mean, it depends on, I can be sitting upstairs on the couch or whatever and just with a guitar, but I tend to do it more in the basement just because it's more private, I guess, or something. But it can happen anywhere. Yeah.
And if you find that it's not happening, if you're in a rut on those rare times, are there certain techniques? Do you just kind of walk away or say, I'm just going to maybe do something else creative?
I walk away.
You do. Yeah.
I walk
Um,
away if I get stuck. Yeah.
do you always return to those ideas? Are there ideas where you just feel like, you know what, it wasn't meant to be? I'm just going to give up on this. Or do you always like, I can't let those ideas go no matter how bad they are.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but do you, yeah, go ahead.
I tend to want to finish him, but then at least if I get that point, then I realize maybe it's not the best song. If it was such a struggle to get there, but I still like to try to finish it, try to finish it. But there's lots of songs that don't get recorded, too. And some are really good. It just depends on the way it works out. I mean, with Baseball Project, I've written like probably 20 or 30 songs that didn't make the cut. But those are different because some of those aren't really like emotional. They're more like, coming up with stories and like it's kind of like more like being a folk singer, with that band. It's like and a journalist at the same time, kind of thing like that. Although some of the songs are just totally emotion, but other ones are really telling stories, like ballads, which is cool because it gets into the old folk singer kind of thing. Um, but yeah, I don't know. There's many notebooks and many text edit, documents on spread out everywhere that are things that just never really happened. And I don't give up on them. Keep them there, even though I think that's really not good at all. I think there might be something I can grab from it at some point, but
My favorite quote, one of my favorite quotes from an author is Anthony Doerr said, I interviewed him and he wrote a book called All the Light We Cannot See, then won the Pulitzer Prize about
uh-huh.
10 years ago. And
Yeah,
I said, what about writer's block? And he goes, I don't believe in writer's block. He called it a failure of courage. And I'll never forget that, a
uh,
failure of courage.
that's
You
good.
just can't be afraid to write the bad stuff, but you'll never get anywhere if you feel like you've got to wait for that perfect moment. And his thought is like, no one's that special. Just don't feel like, oh, I can't write this because it's not great. Just get the damn thing down.
Right, right.
And that's always really helped me because I feel like even if I start to get the bad stuff down, then eventually I got to write through that to get to the better stuff.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I mean, no, it's I don't really feel like I understand exactly what he's saying. I don't feel like it applies to me because I don't really worry about it, you know? I mean, like, it's so funny because I always feel like I'm not writing, I'm not writing enough, but then I just realize I am. I'm always writing. I'm always writing. You know? It's just I just don't it's not like it used to be when, I would, like, write 4 or 5 songs in a day for the Young Fresh Fellows, you know? And I'd show up and practice, and we'd learn them and go play them at shows. I mean, that was amazing. It's not really like that now, but, you know, I realize I am always writing, you know?
Even if you're not, when I was a professor, I told my students that your writing process is always taking place. Even when you're
Right,
not putting pen to paper, it's
right,
happening when you're eating, when you're sleeping, when you're walking. And you have to take that tact, I think, if you're going to have success as a writer, because if
right,
you only think the writing process is taking place as you're putting pen to paper, you'll never get anything done. I agree with you 100%. I think
right,
that's exactly, if you're actually not writing, you actually are, even because stuff's still working out in your mind.
right, right. And one of the weirdest, examples for me was when I had the stroke in 2017. I was out of my mind. I lost all verbal abilities, couldn't form words, sentences, anything like that. Couldn't understand what people were saying to me. And yet, like, the third or fourth day, I'm in the ICU, and I started writing. I started I had the notebook that I was carrying with me when I had the stroke, you know? Um, and, um, I just started writing kind of gobbledygook, you know? I mean, it was really weird stuff, but I mean, by the time I was out of there, I'd probably written 9 or 10 songs, songs. They were in forms of songs. They were formatted as songs, and they were really, really crazy. But that was what my next record was, you know? It was those. I just thought, "These came from somewhere." And some of 'em I have an idea where they came from, but, it's like it's just funny that I almost died, I can't even talk, and I started writing songs, because that's how central writing is to me. I don't even think about it, I just start doing it, I always do it, even if I'm not thinking about it, and that was a really fascinating thing.
So I wonder if it's almost like the floodgates open, like you were writing even for those 3 days, even when you couldn't write. And when you finally could, it was like the dam just burst.
Yeah, well, it's I think to me, it's more just it's really weird that I would have even thought to do something like that. Because but I think it was my brain was attempting to format thoughts and to process language again, because I had lost the ability to do that. And so I think maybe that was just in the back of my mind. That must have been the first way I could think of to to work at it would be to write verses, write songs. It was really weird. You know?
So do you go back? Have you gone back to those then? Those songs? Have those songs ever made it to an album?
Oh, that was like my next record.
Oh, it was. Okay. So I think you said
No,
that.
I
Yeah.
mean, I did a record called Stroke Manor, and I did all those 10 songs or whatever, and then, like, 3 or 4 more that came after I got home but I was still in a weird space, so I just started recording them, and the music was really weird too because my my mind was changed, you know. It was different. It was
Yeah.
everything was different. And it still is really different. And so it's still like that's part of the reason I think why I've gotten so into using the note on and the and writing anywhere wherever I am with a notebook, computer, phone, whatever, because I can't remember the thoughts. I can't remember anymore, you know? So if I think of a really great line, if I don't write it down that second, and even if I do in the time that I thought of a great line from the time I start to type it or write it, it's gone. It's gone. So I got to really jump on it. You know, that's why I can't do this thing. Oh, that's a great line. I'll remember that because that's not going to happen. It's I mean, it was a dodgy thing even back before my brain was fucked up. But you always thought, oh, that's a great line. I don't need to write that down. I'll remember that. But now it's a fact. If I don't write it down in that 5 seconds, it's going to be gone. You know, and that's really frustrating and really weird. But that just means if I don't remember it, I just write something else.
There was a great book. I think I have it on my bookshelf. Um, and it's by this woman who's her name is Alice Flaherty, and she's a neurologist and Mass General. It is called The Midnight Disease, The Drive to Write, Writer's Block, and the Creative Brain.
Mm.
And she's a neurologist at Mass General, and she developed hypergraphia, which is the inability to stop writing. After,
Wow.
well, yeah, and what happened, it was after after she had twins that were stillborn, and she developed incredible depression, but she could not stop writing, but she was writing all over her body, like everywhere. So it was this compulsion. And the book
Wow.
is fascinating. You might find it really interesting because it means she talks about it from a cognitive, like it's not, this is not like a new agey type of book of,
Right, right,
you
right.
know, it's really about kind of it says, why is it that some writers struggle for months to come up with a perfect sentence or phrase, while others, hunched over a keyboard deep into the night, seem unable to stop writing? And she explores the mysteries of literary creativity, the drive to write, what sparks it, and what extinguishes it, drawing on examples from medical case studies, from Kafka to Anne Lamott, from Sylvia Plath to Stephen King. All right, last question. So, other creative, I guess, what other types of art inspire you? Whether they're books, art galleries, how often do those things inspire you?
Well, you mentioned books, art galleries, movies. I mean, it's funny because I every time I go to art gallery, I'm looking at paintings, I start thinking of songs. It's
Yeah, why
I
is that?
I don't know why. It's just something about the images. They just they inspire me, you know, and they just I think about I read about the the history of when it was painted and stuff like that and what was going on and all those things. Those things just inspire me. And books always movies really inspire me. I write a lot of stuff that's based on ideas I got from movies and about movies and from movies. Though that really started happening more recently because of Add the Stroke, you know. One of the songs I wrote in the ICU was there was a shitty little TV and Wizard of Oz was on. And I was like freaking out. I was like, I didn't even know what was happening. It was so weird. But I wrote this one of those songs I wrote was when I was watching the Wizard of Oz. Um and yeah, the movies really I find really inspiring. Um, but yeah, the art galleries, that's funny because you mentioned that because I've never really heard the people saying that, but I definitely, whenever I go, I get ideas for songs.
Are there certain writers that you, or certain genres of writing that you enjoy more than others?
Well, you know, I've got, I've got we're reorganizing our house right now and I've got like a double bookshelf of all James Joyce, Joyce stuff. So right there, you can open it up at any page and see a phrase or a line that's going to inspire me, just because of the language, because the language is so amazing, that's what gets me. That's what inspires me is the language, just the way, it's more now than ever with me. It's the way the words sound, not what they mean, because I have a lot harder time, communicating thoughts that, but I always, even before I had the stroke, I always loved, fucking weird lyrics, like I came from, I mean, when I first heard I Am the Walrus, I was like, this is amazing, I don't know why it spoke to me, but now I can see why, because it's just like it's that kind of I like, words that don't belong together, putting them together, because it inspires me, I don't know, I don't know why. And it's sometimes I think, you should write whatever you think, whatever comes to your mind like that, and then you should go back to it and try to make it more meaningful. So just any person could maybe get something out of the song, but that doesn't work for me that well. If people can't understand it, I don't understand it, it's okay. But I feel like the feeling comes along. Like if you looked at the words on the -5 record, you might think, what's this about? But the feeling of the record is positive. It's great energy. It's about hope, and that's what it feels like to me. But if you look at one line and two lines here and there, might think, what the hell is he talking about? But I don't know. I think the feeling comes across, and that's what I care for.
And that's it for the latest episode of Songwriters on Process. You can find all of the old episodes on all major streaming platforms and probably some minor ones as well. You can also find them on the Songwriters on Process website. I started the site back in 2011, so that means there are hundreds upon hundreds of interviews with some of the world's best songwriters. So take a deep dive into some of those episodes. They are all great. Of course, I'm biased. Also, shameless plug, my book, Desolation, a Heavy Metal Memoir by Mark Morton with Benno Papari, that is me, is out now on Hachette Books and in all major bookstores. Mark is a good friend of mine. He is the guitarist in the metal band Lamb of God. And so we collaborated on his memoir. I'm biased, but that's a damn good book. Again, it is called Desolation, a Heavy Metal Memoir. And lastly, if you want to get in touch, go to the Songwriters on Process website. You can fill out a handy contact form, and it'll get to me that way. You can also email me at ben@songwritersonprocess.com. I'm all ears. Send me your comments, your suggestions, your complaints, people you want me to interview. I get great suggestions all the time. I can't respond to all of the emails because I get a lot of them, but I do read all of them. And let me know your thoughts. If you have ideas for people you want me to interview, there's your chance. And with that, I am out. See you next time.